Nnkechi was a young girl who lived in the sleepy village of Oguta, surrounded by red dusty roads and swaying palm trees. Her family has a reputation for being quite devout. The women's fellowship was led by her mother, Mama Ai, and her father, Elder Anayo, was a deacon in the church. There were stringent regulations in their family. Every night ended with Bible readings, and every day started with prayer. Nnkechi was not given much freedom to make her own decisions. Being the only daughter, she was loved, but also watched very carefully. She was smart and gorgeous, but she was also carrying a silent battle. Her parents did not approve of her love interest or her intended spouse. His name was Oduma. Oduma's parents were known in town for their constant fighting. Even if his father served his mother with a divorce and evicted her, they would be back together by the next day. The people of Oguta avoided them, and as a result, they avoided Oduma as well. But Nnkechi didn't mind because she liked him. He made her feel seen and heard. He was outspoken and did not hide his emotions. She felt free when she was around him. She was drawn to Oduma as a moth to a flame. He was loud, fearless, and fiercely devoted, completely unlike anything she had experienced at home. One day, she made a brave move. When she took Oduma to her house, the sky was clear, and birds were chirping. However, when Elder Ani opened the door and saw Oduma, the wind shifted. He exclaimed, "What is he doing here?" His voice shakes the windows. "That boy from that house will not come here while I am alive." Nnkechi stood frozen. Oduma stared down. Mama Eber attempted to calm her husband. "Let the boy speak first," she softly suggested. But Elder Anayo yelled again. "A child raised in fire cannot give you peace." Oduma walked away that day, and Nnkechi hurried after him. "Don't listen to them," she yelled. He turned and touched her cheek. "I won't let go. Not now." In that moment, Nnkechi made a quiet commitment. Despite the odds, she would choose him even if it meant giving up everything else. One morning Nnkechi entered the parlor with a note in her hand. Her eyes were as crimson as ripe tomatoes. Her voice was as smooth as a morning breeze. "Mama, Papa, I got admission," she told Elder. Anna jumped up and said, "Praise the Lord." Mama Eber kneeled down and raised her hands. "God has done it. My daughter will be a graduate." There was no party, just prayers. They didn't have much, but they gave her all they could. Her father pulled out his savings. Her mother placed rice, beans, and soap in a little bag. They clutched her hands and prayed until their voices cracked. Her mother said, "Go and make us proud." Her father placed a Bible in her hands, reminding her not to forget who she is. Nnkechi nodded. Her face appeared serene, but her heart beat like a drum amid the rain. After embraces and tears, Nnkechi departed the house, but did not attend university. She didn't visit any city full of books and seminars. She went to Oduma, and they fled the town together. Far from Oguta, they discovered a little town. They found themselves in a town where nobody recognized them. Oduma had a buddy who offered them one little, broken room. Walls, one old mattress on the floor. The chamber was as hot as pepper soup. In the afternoon the fan made sounds like a wailing baby. Nnkechi grinned, despite the lack of cotton in the window, which just had a wrapper hanging on a nail. Every morning, they awoke hungry, yet joyful. Every night, they clasped hands and made unaffordable promises. Despite Oduma's assurances that he would get a job and provide for Nnkechi, the truth remained hidden in the corner. There was no work or money. Oduma roamed the streets, seeking employment every day, returning home with dust on his face and misery in his eyes. Nnkechi sold small items like groundnuts, cold water, and second-hand clothes on weekends.
But it wasn't enough. They began getting once a day, and occasionally went to bed with only water in their tummies.
She stayed because she had chosen him, and thought love would be enough. However, something else began to sprout in Nkechi's body, which would eventually change everything. It began one morning. The sky was gray. The room was quiet. Nnkechi rushed outside and knelt near the gutter. She vomited repeatedly, like her body was rejecting something unwanted. She cleaned her mouth and sat on the chilly ground. Her hands were shaking. She knew what it was, so she went to a little clinic in town. The nurse grinned and said, "Congratulations." Nnkechi did not grin back. She went slowly home, her slippers dragging in the dust, her heart pounding like a drum during a village dance. When she opened the door, Oduma was lying on the bed, fanning himself. "I'm pregnant," she replied. Oduma sat up. His smile evaporated. "Pregnant?" he inquired. How are you sure? He wiped his head and looked at the wall, floor, and her, saying, "No job, no money." She nodded. "How can I be a father now?" he asked. "This is too much." That night, the moon shone through the torn window. Odama packed his clothes discreetly while Nnkechi was fast asleep. One shirt, one pair of trousers, and one bag. He gazed at her one last time and said, "I can't do it." Then he ran away. By dawn, his sneakers were gone. His voice was gone. The bed was freezing. Nikki sat in the corner, holding her knees and not crying loudly. Her tears streamed like a busted tap. "I was warned," she muttered. Her pals arrived later that day. They listened and moaned. One of them said, "Forget that boy. He's not worth your tears." Another responded, "A baby will slow you down. You're still young. Just remove it and move on." Nnkechi shook her head. "I can't do that. It's taboo in my family." They giggled. "Who will know we've done it before? It is nothing." They pleaded with her for 2 days. On the 3rd day, one of them brought a little packet. She told them to drink it, and they would be all right. Nikki considered the medicine, her empty room, and her empty heart before taking it. That night, her stomach twisted. Like a rope, she bled, wept, and slept on the floor. By daybreak, the infant was gone. She glanced at the blood that touched her belly, and said, "I'm sorry." The room became quiet again. Odama was still gone, but something within her had changed. Nnkechi didn't cry once the baby departed her body. Her eyes were as dry as cracked dirt after the matan ceremony. Her friends washed her face, dressed her up, and restored her grin. But this time, it was a different type of smile. They responded, "Enough of this crying. Let's show you how to enjoy life." They gave her a crimson dress. The shorts were excessively short and clung to her like a second skin. They painted her lips red. They gave her heels that clicked like horse hooves on cement. They took her to a bar that smelled like smoke and perfume. Music permeated the air, like sweet poison. Men laughed aloud. Glasses clinked. Eyes looked. A man in a large automobile called her. "You are beautiful," he whispered, slipping money into her palm. She sat with me and laughed. She danced. She felt powerful that night, but when she looked in the mirror, she saw a different person. She was not a church girl or a crybaby, but a confident girl who achieved her goals. Rich men lined up like goats seeking water. They called her baby sweetie princess. They bought her a phone, shoes, and clothes, without asking any questions or telling lies. Nnkechi learned that feelings do not feed you, but money does. She played her game skillfully, and despite another pregnancy, she did not worry. She laughed and contacted her buddy, who provided the medicine. First one disappeared, then another, and then a third. Fourth gone, each one departed softly. No cradle, no name, no tears. The wrapper she used to clean herself, and the bitter tea she drank after her body turned into a graveyard, were not discussed. However, she danced outside. She wore gold. She smiled widely. Despite being told she was enjoying her finest life, the girl realized she wasn't clean, she wasn't free, she was simply floating like a feather with no breeze. Eventually, it occurred again. She became pregnant for the 7th time, but it refused to leave. Nnkechi swallowed the pills. Nothing occurred. She took another. Despite going to another clinic, the baby remained stubborn and refused to boil. The nurse remarked, "You're too far gone. Carry it. Removing it may harm your womb." Nnkechi was taken aback and contemplated many possibilities. Nnkechi carried a persistent pregnancy for 9 months, despite her lack of readiness to become a mother. Her tummy grew, and her physique transformed. Her feet enlarged, but her heart remained the same. Cold and dry. No joy, no singing, and no baby buying. Just silence. She kept it a secret, and covered her stomach with large clothing and tight wrappers. When asked, she laughed it off, saying it was simply a matter of waiting. However, she knew this child was coming, and it arrived in the evening when no one was around. Only her and her pain. She screamed into her pillows. She bit her lip. She cried without tears. The baby came, a male with tiny fingers and warm flesh. Eyes like hers, but as she gazed at him, she felt nothing. No delight, no fear, no. She sat on the floor holding him for hours, and the baby screamed. Softly, as if he realized something was wrong, Nnkechi devised a strategy, would force the baby on any man. This is because she has been with many men and couldn't quite figure out who the baby was. So in the morning, she carried him to the first man. "This is your child," she said. Laughed, "Are you mad? I've never touched you without protection." The second man said, "Thief, get away from here." By the third day, Nnkechi was exhausted, and the baby kept crying. She glanced at him and said, "I don't know what to do with you." That evening she wrapped him in a white cloth. She traveled far past the stores, the market, and the park, until she reached a large black bin, on the corner of an old fence, was full of dirt. Flies danced. On top, the air smelled like death. She looked around and noticed that no one was paying attention. She raised the lid and looked at the baby one final time. He blinked, and boom. She dropped him in, shut the lid, and raced away. She did not look back. She returned home, wiped her face, and assured herself, "It's over." And from when her friends arrived to ask Nnkechi, she never spoke about it again. Grinned and lied, he finally consented to take the baby. She stated he came back. They hugged her. "You see, we told you that men always come around." She nodded. But inside her chest, her heart was heavy like a bag of damp sand. She cleaned it. She followed them to the pub that night while wearing makeup and heels. The music was loud. The lights flickered. Men bought drinks, and laughter filled the room. She danced and laughed, but it was hushed inside. The laughter didn't, the drinks did not sweeten her tongue, and the compliments did not melt. Like previously, she smiled, but it wasn't the kind of grin that touched her friends didn't notice her discomfort, instead remarking, "Nnkechi, you look hotter than ever." She would nod, but every night, when she removed her clothing and wiped her, she sat alone on the bed, and glanced at the ceiling. She heard a baby. Even when there wasn't a baby present, she would weep in her imagination. I felt like someone was observing her, like two small eyes from a dark bin were still following her. She shook her head and whispered, "Stop it, it's over." It remained as a shadow behind her, laughing, like a stain beneath. The days passed, and she returned to the world she knew. Sugar daddy bars, fast money, but it didn't taste sweet anymore. It was like biting dried leaves. She began to feel really tired, not the type of worn out that sleep could cure. A kind of fatigue emanated from the soul, and one day while she sat on a plastic slash, as she sat in her chair, watching the other females laugh and dance, she asked herself, "Is this all there is?" But no one answered. Only quiet sat beside her. Nnkechi. Tired of lies, tired of bars, tired of men who never stayed up in the morning. She persuaded herself, maybe it's time to be normal. That's when she met Nnkechi. He wasn't wealthy, and he didn't drive a fancy automobile, but he possessed something special: peace. Emma was a teacher, and his voice was smooth like wind through cassava leaves. He spoke gently, strolled leisurely, and smiled freely. He did not glance at her figure. Instead, he focused on her eyes. "Her eyes marry me," he suggested one evening. She blinked me. "Yes," he responded. "The kind of lady I've been hoping for." Her heart skipped. No man had ever prayed for her before they got married in a modest church with a few people in white dresses. A little rice, no noise, no falsehoods. For the first time in 4 years, Nnkechi felt like a wife. She cooked, cleaned, and waited for him at home. When he arrived home at night, he stroked her softly and held her as she would break. She thought maybe, just maybe, her history had stayed in the past. After 1 year, no child arrived, and 2 years later, it was still vacant. People began to whisper, is she a woman or a log of wood? She appears healthy, yet nothing is moving inside her. Emma's mother came to visit one day. She remained for a week, and on the 7th night, she informed Emma, "That girl, she's hiding something." Nnkechi did not say anything. However, his eyes began to change, and his smile became thinner. He returned home and later slept. In case she noticed, she tried cooking his favorite soup, when his back was turned. His best rapper sat next to him and caressed his feet, but his eyes were distant.